Hey guys, what is up? Kid here. Doing a video on basically the Looking Glass. This is the Distortion package. I think this is one of the strongest set of cards they released in the newest set, and how they work together and how busted they are. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point something in here gets restricted or whatever, maybe we're going to see an entire meta revolve around the Looking Glass, essentially, because one of the strongest cards we have access to in this is Cheshire Cat. So Cheshire Cat here is, once this loads, what's interesting about this card is it is an EX. I forgot what they call it. That element, the advanced element, basically. Norm. So normally you wouldn't only be able to play this at level 3, but because of the Looking Glass here, which will give you access to being able to play it immediately starting from basically basic spirit, it makes Cheshire Cat kind of go insane. Both of these effects that it has are just very, very powerful effects, which after you start playtesting with it, it's insanely powerful, and like you can kind of just go the route of a Cheshire Cat beatdown, essentially, depending on like what's happening, if your opponent's breaking or so forth. But let me talk about what makes Cheshire Cat so insane, and we're probably going to see tons and tons of decks playing Cheshire Cat. Obviously, this is one of the huge payoffs for playing the Distortion stuff. But what makes it so powerful is that we have two forms of evasion here, which makes it very hard to interact with, which is Spell Shroud and Stealth. The next part is its first effect, where Cheshire Cat has all activated abilities with Distortion Regalia you control, which means that at any time we have to use some follower to swing into Cheshire Cat, in response, they can sack it and use it an effect they have already on the board. Of course, you'll be able to see what effects are available to them, meaning that you'll kind of know what you need to play around, essentially. But the fact that this basically doesn't punish you at all for playing the card, it has double evasion, meaning that it's hard to swing into already. It can't be attacked by or be targeted by spells, which is quite annoying. It has 3 health, which means you can't just like stifling it or something like that, so you can remove it from the board, which means that it's going to be a very sticky ally in general. The next part of it that's kind of like obnoxious, because like a 1/3 ally is not too scary. Yes, it's annoying. You're going to get pings for 1 every turn, essentially, and you get it in like little pot shots here and there, which is quite annoying. But the other issue here is that Cheshire Cat gets plus X attack, or X is the total base power among Distortion weapons you control. One of the best weapons in here is Inert Sword. This is basically comes out and makes Cheshire Cat a 3/3, and suddenly this 3/3 is beating you down. It has invasion, it can't be targeted, it's really hard to remove, and anytime you do target it to try to remove it, if your opponent has any of these other Distortion Regalia out on the board, they now have a sack outlet to get some other value for you wasting a swing into Cheshire Cat, essentially, to remove Cheshire Cat off the board, meaning that this is going to be a very, very annoying card to even handle. There's not, like, off the top of my head, there's not a ton of real like AoE spells, essentially, that do not target in this game that I'm aware of. Obviously, the biggest one is Polaris, which also recently gotten hit with an errata, nerfing it a bit. But this entire package of the Regalia access you have access to, plus Cheshire Cat, is insane. And I think another payoff that people aren't really talking about and don't realize how powerful it is Reckoning's Wake. This card's insane. If you saw, there's like some tamer list running around that were playing Genbu, that were playing not Lost in Thought. I wish. They were playing, what's that card name? Oh, Idle Thoughts. Just for the set up the mill and then easy access into like a level 1 float, which was actually a really strong inclusion in the deck, surprisingly, because I know they're like Idle Thoughts are thrown into every starter deck, essentially, so everyone has like a million copies of them, but it did very well in Genbu. Now imagine having that same access now, but at a minimum, it's a glimpse for, because it'll be the top 3 plus X, and you'll always have Looking Glass out, so this will always be at least +1. So the minimum here is going to be 4, and then every additional Regalia you have on the board, or even Cheshire Cat, will add towards this plus X. I'm currently using this card almost in like every deck I play with the Looking Glass. I think this is, outside of Cheshire Cat, this is the biggest reason to playing the Looking Glass. Not only does it fix your next couple turns once you know what you're playing into, it sets up an easy float for you to go into level 1. So if your opponent can't really banish this float in response to you using it at the end of the turn, once you got as much information out of them, now you can set up your draws to find the exact pieces you need. If you need a specific tech card, this will help dig for it. I think this card is insane. I think when people catch on about how powerful this card is, we're probably going to see this card in like a ton of lists. Like, I feel like if you're not playing Cheshire Cat and Reckoning's Wake in your Looking Glass builds, then you're probably not getting the maximum value. I think Reckoning's Wake is one of the biggest payoffs other than Cheshire Cat to be playing the Looking Glass. Now let's kind of talk about like why Cheshire Cat also is insane when it comes to its ability, getting activated abilities, Distortion Regalia you control. So some plays you could be doing is obviously, if Cheshire Cat gets locked down and you can't like untap with her, for example, like they hit you with a Snow Fairy, suddenly at any point, if you have a Consumption Ring, you can just sack your Cheshire Cat in response to their recollection phase, and then now it's going to be harder for them to deal with. So they've kind of wasted that Snow Fairy, essentially. Another thing too is Necklace of Hindsight. If you have multiple Cheshire Cats and you don't really care, they try to remove your Cheshire Cat. In response, you just pop Cheshire Cat to use the Necklace of Hindsight's effect, and now you kind of set up your opponent's draws to be as bad as possible, which is really, really powerful. And then another card that I don't think people are talking a lot about is Bauble of Scarcity. So this card is also insane with Cheshire Cat. After playing with it just a handful of games, it's obnoxiously powerful. So there are a lot of times where if you go hands down completely and your opponent tries to interact with you once you've tapped out, in response, if you have all of Scarcity out, you can sack your Cheshire Cat to force them to discard. There have been plays too where I go hands down during Recollection phase. My opponent is holding up a 3-card hand. I know they have interaction that I want to play around. I just sack Cheshire Cat in response, pop it, make them discard a card, and then sack the Ball of Scarcity, make them discard another card. I am not losing any value because I don't have to discard because my hand is empty. And then now I got to get to play around their counter and their interaction. I think it's very scary that that's an interaction that can happen against people if you're able to set that up. I feel like a lot of people are going to have to play some way to remove Ball of Scarcity. What's kind of scary about this Regalia as well is that if your opponent interacts with the Regalia, once again, in response, you can just pop this and make you both discard, as long as you're playing a deck that values its graveyard, which this set has a lot of value in the graveyard, then you're okay a lot of the times discarding a card from your hand because you know you're going to get value from that discard anyway. So like it being in the graveyard actually is a bigger payoff than being in your hand. Death's Essence Amulet as well is another amulet that's pretty obnoxious here, because if, once again, if they're removing Alice off the board, you just, you can pop, or whenever they remove one of your other allies off the board, then you can pop Alice if it's in a position like it's getting Snow Fairy, to just go ahead and force your opponent to discard. You get more information as well, and then you could pop the Death Essence as well, so forcing your opponent to discard 2 cards. You can both looking at their memory and their hand. It's kind of obnoxious that can happen that way. I think these are kind of like the biggest payoffs for playing Cheshire Cat, or in that sense, with those Regalias in mind for playing Looking Glass. I really implore you guys to really test out the different Regalia here with Cheshire Cat. It's pretty expensive. I think Cheshire Cats are still sitting around $20 to $23 each. Looking Glass is around $70, $80 right now, non-foil. Luckily, all the Regalia pieces are super cheap, unless you're trying to buy foil versions of some of them. But yeah, you need to test this out in like every deck you can possibly can, because I think we're kind of going into meta where Cheshire Cat will be the card that we have to out in most games, and it's not going to be fun to deal with this card because its effect is just so powerful. Thankfully, it is a unique ally, so you can't have multiple Cheshire Cats on the board, because then the game would just be over so quickly. But yeah, so really take a look into the distortion packages, I haven't been able to explore a lot. I can say for sure one of the worst cards right now, I think, going into this meta without really knowing where we're going to end up, of Sword of Shadows is not going to be the best card ever, unfortunately, because if everyone's playing Cheshire Cat, that means everyone has access to a stealth ally, meaning this is going to get -1, which means only warriors will get a +1 off of this to get extra value with their own Cheshire Cat. But otherwise, it's just like a lot of plays I've been doing is I open Cheshire Cat, we play the Cheshire Cat, you know, get in a swing for 1 or whatever. Next turn, if I don't have to level up, I go to Inert Sword, and now I'm just swinging for 3 every turn, and your opponent has to start respecting it. They have to do something to deal with it. I do think there's a lot of really good taunters and stuff now in this set, especially for Guardian, because there's been a lot of support for Guardian in this set. So maybe Cheshire Cat, depending on how the meta shapes up to be, won't be as scary and as an aggressive card as I'm making it out to be right now. But in my very limited testing so far since the release of DTR, Cheshire Cat is kind of like the card, the boss monster, essentially, we should be looking at. Every deck probably needs a way to out this card, or at least stop this card from swinging in so often. It's very hard, like I said, to even really respectively out this card, because in a lot of scenarios, if they have a way to remove this, they can sack it in response if they've already set up a Regalia on the board, Distortion Regalia on the board, making it very, very tough for you to get any value in, you know, removing Cheshire Cat, especially if they use some kind of AoE spell to remove this. And in response, you pop this to like pop Bubble of Scarcity. Suddenly, they had to use 2 cards essentially to be able to answer your Cheshire Cat, and you're totally fine with that. It's absurd how powerful this card is. I kind of like foreseeing like most decks running 3 to 4 of this card, just because opening Cheshire Cat and then like being able to freely go into any Distortion Regalia, especially Inert Sword, is pretty obnoxious. But yeah, with that being said, guys, really test out the Looking Glass stuff. I'm really excited because I know there is a C regional coming up. I think I don't know the dates, but I know there's a C regional coming up, so I'm really excited to see what people are exploring in this set. I've been grinding a ton on a Genbu list that I've been enjoying a lot. I think I've locked in the final 60 for the most part for my main deck. Just got to figure out what is going on with the sideboard once you know, this meta settles, and hopefully Genbu is still a relevant deck even during this meta, because I know there will be a lot of decks that will be abusing the graveyard in this meta. So we're probably going to see a lot of censors, a lot of lanterns, and there's a lot of like banishment cards for the graveyard, which is scary. Win might be really powerful this set against other like mill decks, essentially, because they do have access to that one card that will make your opponent banish cards if they go from like deck to grave or whatever. One other card too that is going to be really interesting too is Ludus, I believe, from I think that card came out in HVN, where if a floating memory would enter the graveyard from anywhere, it gets banished instead. That's another scary card when like ally decks will have access to, who are looking to play like an ally deck beatdown. Ally deck beatdowns with Distortion package too is really scary once again too. I don't know. It's very interesting. I feel like this meta will definitely develop into we're going to play Distortion packages that are abusable because of Cheshire Cat. But yeah, with that being said, guys, I'm excited to see what develops in this meta. Hopefully you guys get some ideas off of just talking about the Distortion stuff. Let me know what things you've been abusing. If you guys think my read on the Distortion stuff is incorrect, let me know. I'm always curious to see what the community is doing and what people are coming up with. I know right now, I think most people are kind of like keeping all the really spicy stuff on the down low, because Boston is in about a month, and I'm sure all of the GA like top players are kind of just keeping it all in-house until Boston. But I'm sure with the regional and C coming up, and I think there's like 2 big events coming up that are like regionals, we'll get a glimpse into what people have been brewing and kind of the direction the meta will end up being. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I really appreciate you guys here. I know I'm not releasing a ton of videos at once right now, but I'm starting to pick up the pace now. Hopefully I'll have some match videos out this week with the new DTR stuff. With that being said, later everyone.